There are moments in life when a single sentence can change everything. A few simple words can carry years of hope, fear, waiting, prayer, and uncertainty. For me, hearing my dad finally say yes was one of those moments. It was not just an answer, it was not just permission. It felt like a door opening after standing in front of it for so long, wondering if it would ever move. And when I heard those words, I realized that sometimes the biggest moments in our lives arrive quietly. There is no dramatic music, no perfect setting, no warning that something unforgettable is about to happen. Sometimes it is simply a conversation with your father, a look in his eyes, and a few words that suddenly make the future feel real. I think every person understands in some way what it means to want the approval of someone they love. A father's approval can carry a different kind of weight. It comes from someone who's watched you grow, someone who has seen your mistakes, your victories, your weaknesses, and your dreams. A father does not always make decisions based only on what you want in the moment. Sometimes he sees the things you cannot see because his heart is trying to protect you. That is why hearing him finally accept this relationship meant so much to me. For a long time, I understood that my dad had questions. He wanted to know if this love was real. He wanted to know if the person I had chosen was someone who would truly stand beside me. He wanted to know whether this relationship could survive more than excitement and beautiful moments. And honestly, I cannot blame him for asking those questions. When someone loves you deeply, they do not simply celebrate your happiness. They also worry about your future. They wonder who will be there when life becomes difficult, when circumstances change, when emotions become complicated, and when the easy days disappear. So when my dad finally accepted us, I did not hear only the word yes. I heard trust. I heard hope. I heard him saying, in his own way, "I believe you are making the right choice." And that touched something deep inside me. Maybe that is why I could not simply celebrate without thinking about everything that brought us to this moment. There were times when I wondered whether we would actually get here. There were moments when the future felt uncertain. There were conversations that were difficult. There were questions that did not have immediate answers. There were times when waiting felt frustrating, and times when I wondered whether everything would work out the way we hoped. But love teaches you something when you are willing to be patient. It teaches you that not every delay means denial. Not every obstacle means the relationship is wrong. Sometimes challenges reveal whether what you have is strong enough to continue. Sometimes waiting allows people to understand each other more deeply. Sometimes a difficult season prepares you for a blessing that you would not have appreciated if it had arrived too easily. Looking back now, I can see that the waiting was part of our story. The questions were part of our story. Even the uncertainty was part of our story. And perhaps that is what makes this moment so emotional. We did not simply arrive here by accident. We arrived here after choosing to keep believing in what we had. When my dad finally accepted us, I felt a sense of peace that is difficult to describe. It was as though something inside me finally became quiet. The questions that had been sitting in the back of my mind suddenly became less frightening. I could finally look toward the future without feeling that there was something standing between us and the life we wanted to build. And yet his acceptance also reminded me that this is not the end of the journey. In many ways, it is the beginning. It is easy to become excited about a wedding. It is easy to imagine the celebration, the smiles, the photographs, the beautiful clothes, the ring, the music, and the moment when two people stand together and promise forever. But marriage is much bigger than a wedding day. A wedding is one beautiful day. Marriage is every day that comes afterward. That is why my dad's acceptance means more to me than simply knowing that the wedding can happen. It reminds me that the people who love us are trusting us with something precious. They are trusting us to take this commitment seriously. They are trusting us to respect each other, to remain faithful, to communicate when things become difficult, and to remember why we chose one another in the first place. I know that love cannot be measured by how perfect everything looks from the outside. Real love is tested in ordinary moments. It is tested when two people are tired. It is tested when they disagree. It is tested when life does not go according to plan. It is tested when one person needs patience and the other needs understanding. And if we are truly ready for marriage, then we must be ready not only for the beautiful moments, but also for the responsibility that comes with them. That is something I want my dad to know. His acceptance will never be something I take lightly. I understand that behind his questions was love, behind his hesitation was concern. Behind his desire to be certain was a father's heart trying to protect the future of someone he loves. And now, instead of being afraid of those questions, I am grateful for them, because they forced me to look at my own intentions. They made me ask myself whether I was truly ready to make a lifelong commitment. They made me think beyond the excitement of saying, "We're getting married." They made me think about what it means to say, "I will be there when life is difficult. I will listen when we disagree. I will support you when you are struggling. I will celebrate you when you succeed. I will choose you not only when everything is easy, but when everything requires patience." That is the kind of commitment I want to carry into this next chapter. And today, when I think about my dad finally saying yes, I do not only feel happiness, I feel gratitude. Gratitude for his honesty. Gratitude for his protection. Gratitude for the time he took to understand. Gratitude for the opportunity to show him that this relationship is built on something deeper than a temporary emotion. There's something incredibly powerful about knowing that the person who once had doubts can now look at you and say, "I believe in this." That moment does not erase the past. Instead, it gives the past meaning. All the waiting, all the conversations, all the uncertainty suddenly become part of a story that led us here. And maybe that is the most beautiful part of all. We are not simply celebrating that my dad accepted our relationship. We are celebrating the trust that came with that acceptance. We are celebrating the possibility of a future that once felt uncertain. We are celebrating two people who refused to let temporary difficulties decide their entire story. So yes, congratulations. My dad accepted. And for the first time, saying we are getting married does not feel like a distant dream. It feels like the beginning of something real. Love sounds beautiful when we talk about it in simple words. We say love is happiness, love is connection, love is finding someone who makes our heart feel at home. But real love is much deeper than that. Real love is tested when things do not go according to our plans. It is tested in the moments when doubts appear, when people question your choices, when the future feels uncertain, and when waiting becomes harder than you ever expected. And if there is one thing this journey has taught me, it is that love that survives difficult seasons becomes stronger because of them. There were moments when everything felt easy. There were conversations that made us laugh, memories that made us believe the future would be beautiful, and moments when it seemed impossible that anything could ever stand between us. But then came the questions. There were concerns, hesitation, and uncertainty. Sometimes the people around us needed time to understand what we already felt in our hearts. And when you are deeply in love, waiting for someone else to believe in your relationship can be painful. You want to say, "Just trust us. We know what we are doing." You want everything to happen immediately. You want the people you love to see what you see. But life does not always work that way. Sometimes people need time. Sometimes trust has to be earned. Sometimes love has to prove itself through patience rather than words. That was one of the hardest lessons for me to understand. I wanted to move forward because my heart already knew what it wanted. But I also had to understand that the people who cared about us were not necessarily trying to stop us. They were trying to make sure that what we were building was strong enough to last. And there is a huge difference between someone questioning your relationship because they do not believe in love and someone questioning it because they care about your future. My dad's concerns forced me to look deeper. They made me ask questions I might not have asked if everything had been easy. Am I ready for commitment? Am I ready to be responsible for another person's heart? Am I ready to communicate when I am frustrated instead of walking away? Am I ready to forgive? Am I ready to sacrifice? Am I ready to stay when life becomes uncomfortable? Those questions are not romantic, but they are necessary. Because marriage cannot be built only on feelings. Feelings are beautiful, but feelings change. Some days you will feel incredibly close. Other days you may feel tired, distracted, or overwhelmed by everything happening around you. That does not mean love has disappeared. It means love has to become a decision as well as an emotion. You decide to listen. You decide to be patient. You decide to be patient. You decide to speak with kindness. You decide to forgive. You decide to protect what you have instead of destroying it during a difficult moment. That is what the challenges taught me. There were times when I wondered why the journey could not simply be easier. Why did there have to be hesitation? Why did there have to be difficult conversations? Why couldn't everyone simply celebrate with us from the beginning? But now I understand that perhaps the difficult moments were preparing us for something bigger. If everything had happened instantly, maybe we would have celebrated the wedding but never fully appreciated the journey. We might have focused on the destination and forgotten the lessons we needed to learn along the way. Waiting teaches patience. Doubt teaches us to examine our intentions. Challenges teach us communication. Resistance teaches us perseverance. And uncertainty teaches us faith. Sometimes the things we consider obstacles are actually opportunities to become stronger. I remember how difficult it could feel when the future was unclear. You can have a dream in your heart and still be afraid that it might not happen. You can believe in someone and still wonder whether circumstances will allow everything to work out. You can love someone deeply and still have moments when you ask yourself, what if this doesn't happen? Those questions are human. We all experience them. But there comes a moment when you have to decide whether fear will control your future or whether you will continue walking forward with courage. For me, that meant refusing to let uncertainty become an excuse to give up. It meant understanding that love is not proven by how quickly everything happens. Love is proven by how you behave while you are waiting. Anyone can be happy when everything is going their way. But can you remain respectful when things are difficult? Can you remain patient when you do not have the answer you want? Can you continue believing in the person you love when other people have questions? Can you listen instead of becoming defensive? Can you give people the time they need without turning every delay into a personal attack? Those are the moments that reveal character. And through all of this, I began to understand something important about my dad. His hesitation did not necessarily mean that he wanted to see us fail. In fact, it may have meant the opposite. He wanted to know that this relationship was strong enough to survive real life. He wanted evidence that we were not simply caught up in emotion. He wanted to see commitment. He wanted to see maturity. He wanted to know that when the excitement of the beginning eventually became the ordinary rhythm of life, we would still choose one another. And honestly, I respect that. Because if I were in his position, I would probably have questions too. When you love someone, you do not want them to experience unnecessary heartbreak. You want to protect them from decisions that could hurt them. You want to know that the person entering their life will treat them with respect. You want to know that they will not disappear when things become difficult. So instead of seeing every question as rejection, I learned to see some of those questions as opportunities to demonstrate sincerity, not through dramatic speeches, not through promises made in emotional moments, but through consistency, through patience, through the way we treated one another, through the way we handled disagreements, through the way we talked about the future, through the way we continued to choose each other, even when the path was not perfectly smooth. That is what makes this moment so meaningful now. My dad's acceptance did not happen in a vacuum. It came after a journey. It came after watching, listening, questioning, and understanding. It came after time had given him an opportunity to see whether what we had was real. And when that acceptance finally came, it felt different because we knew what it had taken to get there. It felt earned. It felt meaningful. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle that had been incomplete for a long time. I also learned that love does not mean avoiding every difficult conversation. Sometimes love means having the difficult conversation because the relationship matters too much to leave important things unsaid. Love does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means being honest when things are not perfect. Love does not mean never disagreeing. It means learning how to disagree without destroying each other. Love does not mean promising that there will never be pain. It means promising that when pain comes, you will not immediately run away. That is the kind of love I want to carry forward, because now we are approaching marriage, and marriage will bring its own challenges. There will be responsibilities, decisions, unexpected circumstances, and moments when we will have to choose patience over frustration. But instead of being afraid of those challenges, I want to remember what brought us here. We already know what it means to wait. We already know what it means to face uncertainty. We already know what it means to keep believing when the answer is not immediate. And perhaps that is why I feel more prepared now than I did before. The difficult season did not destroy us. It strengthened us. The waiting did not make the love disappear. It made us appreciate the moment when the door finally opened. And the questions did not end our story. They helped us understand how serious this next chapter truly is. So when I say that we are finally getting married, I am not talking about a perfect love story where nothing ever went wrong. I am talking about something much more real, a love that faced questions, survived uncertainty, learned patience, and continued moving forward. And now, as we step toward the future, I want to remember that every challenge we survived was preparing us for the promise we are about to make. Because sometimes the strongest love stories are not the ones without obstacles. They are the ones where two people keep choosing love through them. There is something deeply meaningful about a father's acceptance. It is difficult to explain unless you have experienced the weight of knowing that someone who has spent years protecting you is finally able to look at the person you love and say, "I trust this." Those words may sound simple, but behind them can be years of concern, questions, observation, and hope. A father does not simply look at the excitement of today. He often looks toward tomorrow. He wants to know what kind of life his child will have, who will stand beside them when life becomes difficult, and whether the person they have chosen will treat their heart with the care it deserves. That is why my dad's acceptance means so much to me. It is not just about getting permission to celebrate a wedding. It is about receiving a kind of trust that cannot be demanded. It has to be earned. When someone has loved you since you were young, they naturally develop a protective heart. They remember the days when you needed help with the smallest things. They remember your first successes, your disappointments, your mistakes, and the moments when you were trying to discover who you were. So when you eventually tell that person, "I have chosen someone to spend my life with," they may not immediately think about the wedding. Their mind may go much further. They may think about the mornings when you are no longer living the same life you once had. They may think about the difficult seasons that every marriage eventually faces. They may wonder whether the person you love will stay patient when circumstances become stressful. They may wonder whether there will be respect when disagreements happen. They may wonder whether you will be supported when you feel lost or discouraged. Those questions can sometimes feel uncomfortable, especially when your heart is already certain. You may want to say, "But I love this person." Isn't that enough? But as I have grown through this experience, I have realized that love is important, but responsibility is important too. A father's questions can remind us that marriage is not simply about finding someone who makes us happy. It is about becoming someone who can also make another person feel safe, respected, valued, and supported. That is a much bigger responsibility. And perhaps that is why my dad needed time. He was not simply judging a relationship. In his heart, he was protecting a future. I can understand that now. At first, it might have been easy to see hesitation as rejection. When you're emotionally invested, any question can feel like criticism. You may wonder why someone cannot simply trust what you feel. But with time, I began to understand that his concerns came from a place of love. He was asking the questions because he cared. He wanted to know that I understood the seriousness of the decision I was making. He wanted to know that I was not simply excited about a wedding, but prepared for a marriage. And that distinction changed everything for me. A wedding is a celebration. Marriage is a commitment. A wedding may last for a day, but marriage asks you to show up again and again. It asks you to be present when your spouse is happy and when they are struggling. It asks you to celebrate their victories without jealousy and comfort them during their disappointments without making everything about yourself. It asks you to communicate instead of assuming. It asks you to forgive instead of keeping score. When I realized this, I also realized that my dad's acceptance was not something I should simply celebrate and forget. It was a responsibility. His acceptance was a reminder that someone who loves me deeply has chosen to trust the person I am choosing to marry. That trust deserves respect. It makes me want to become better, not just for myself and my future spouse, but for the family that is now becoming part of our shared story. I want my dad to look back one day and know that his trust was not misplaced. I want him to see two people who continue to choose one another even after the excitement of the engagement and wedding has passed. I want him to see that his questions helped us take this commitment seriously, and I want him to know that I understand why he was careful. Because being a parent means carrying concerns that your children do not always see. Parents often worry silently. They may not explain every fear they have. Sometimes their questions may sound strict or difficult, but underneath them is a simple desire: I want you to be okay. That desire is powerful. And when a father finally says yes, there is something emotional about realizing that the person who once wanted to protect you is now willing to let you step into a new chapter. It is not necessarily easy for a parent to watch their child build a life with someone else. It requires trust. It requires letting go. It requires believing that the lessons they taught you will continue to guide you even when they are no longer making every decision for you. So my dad's acceptance feels like more than approval. It feels like a blessing to move forward. And I do not want to take that blessing for granted. I want to honor it through the way I live. I want to honor it through patience. I want to honor it through loyalty. I want to honor it through the way I speak to my future spouse when nobody else is listening. Because it is easy to look loving when everyone is watching. The real test is how you behave in private. It is easy to promise forever during a beautiful celebration. The real promise begins on an ordinary Tuesday when you are tired, frustrated, or worried, and you still choose kindness. That is what I want my dad to know. I am not promising that our marriage will be perfect. No marriage is perfect. I am promising that we will take it seriously. I am promising that we will continue learning. I am promising that when problems come, we will not treat them as proof that our love has failed. We will treat them as opportunities to communicate, grow, and understand each other better. And perhaps that is the greatest way to honor the trust we have been given. Because his acceptance does not mean he believes we will never face problems. It means he believes we can face them together. That is a beautiful kind of trust. It says, I have watched you, I have listened to you, I have seen your choices, and now I believe you are ready. Those words can change a person's heart. They can make you realize that the next chapter requires maturity. It requires humility. It requires a willingness to admit when you are wrong. It requires the courage to apologize. It requires the strength to forgive. And most importantly, it requires remembering that marriage is not about winning against each other. It is about building something together. That is what I hope my dad sees when he looks at us. Not perfection, not a fantasy, but two people who genuinely want to build a life together. Two people who understand that love is not simply about how we feel today. It is about what we are willing to do tomorrow, and the day after that, and every ordinary day that follows. So when I say my dad accepted, I am not saying that every question disappeared or that every fear in life is gone. I am saying something more meaningful. I am saying that the person who wanted to protect my future has now chosen to trust the future I am building. And that trust is something I will carry with gratitude into the next chapter of our lives. Because his acceptance is not the end of the story. It is the blessing that allows us to begin the next chapter with open hearts, grateful spirits, and a deeper understanding of what commitment truly means. There is a moment when a dream stops being something you imagine and becomes something you can finally begin to prepare for. For so long, saying someday can feel safe because someday does not require a date, a plan, or a promise that everyone can see. You can dream about it, talk about it, and picture it in your mind without knowing exactly when it will happen. But there is something completely different about finally being able to say, we are getting married. Those words carry a new kind of weight because they turn hope into commitment and imagination into a real future. For us, this moment feels especially meaningful because it did not arrive without a journey. We have already walked through questions, uncertainty, waiting, and difficult conversations. We have already learned that love is not simply about reaching the happiest moment as quickly as possible. Sometimes the road toward that moment teaches you what you need to know before you arrive. And now that my dad has accepted us, the words, we are getting married, feel more powerful than they ever did before. I can remember the times when the future felt like something far away. We could imagine what it would be like, but we could not completely know whether we would reach that point. There were plans we could only discuss quietly. There were dreams that had to wait. There were moments when we wondered whether everything would finally come together. But now something has changed. The future is no longer just an idea, it is becoming a responsibility. And honestly, that realization is both exciting and humbling. When you say you are getting married, you are not simply announcing that you have found someone you love. You are announcing that you are ready to build a life with that person. You are saying that the relationship is moving from one chapter into another. You are saying that you are prepared to make decisions together, face challenges together, celebrate victories together, and create a home where both people can feel valued and respected. That is a beautiful responsibility. And I think that is why this moment deserves more than excitement. It deserves gratitude. We should be grateful for every step that brought us here. We should be grateful for the conversations that helped us understand each other. We should be grateful for the difficult moments that taught us patience. We should be grateful for the people who asked hard questions because they cared about our future. And especially, we should be grateful for my dad's acceptance. Because now, when I look at the future, I do not only see a wedding day, I see everything that comes afterward. I see ordinary mornings. I see long conversations. I see moments of laughter. I see unexpected challenges. I see decisions that will require both of us to compromise. I see days when one of us may need extra patience from the other. I see celebrations where we will look back and realize how far we have come. That is what marriage really is. It is not one spectacular moment. It is thousands of ordinary moments connected by a commitment. And that is why I want to approach this next chapter with the right mindset. I do not want to think, we finally made it, so everything is finished. I want to think, we finally made it, so now the real work begins. The wedding will be beautiful, but the life we build afterward is what matters most. A ring can symbolize commitment, but our actions will demonstrate it. Words can express love, but our patience will prove it. Promises can sound beautiful, but our consistency will give those promises meaning. That is the difference between preparing for a wedding and preparing for marriage. A wedding asks us to celebrate. Marriage asks us to grow. A wedding brings families and friends together for a special day. Marriage asks two people to continue choosing one another when everyone else has gone home. And that is the commitment I want to make. I want my future spouse to know that I am not only excited about the beautiful parts of marriage, I am willing to embrace the responsibility that comes with it. When disagreements happen, I want to listen. When life becomes stressful, I want to communicate. When mistakes happen, I want to forgive. When success comes, I want to celebrate without forgetting gratitude. When difficult seasons arrive, I want to remember why we started, because there will be difficult seasons. No matter how much two people love each other, life will eventually bring unexpected situations. Plans will change. Circumstances will surprise us. There may be moments when we do not know exactly what to do next. But I do not want to measure our marriage by whether problems appear. I want to measure it by how we respond to them. Do we turn toward each other or away from each other? Do we speak with respect or with anger? Do we search for solutions or spend our energy blaming one another? Do we remember that we are on the same team? Those choices will matter far more than how perfect our wedding day looks. And perhaps that is why finally saying we're getting married feels so emotional. It is not simply about the ceremony. It is about saying yes to a lifetime of learning. It is about saying yes to another person's dreams. It is about saying yes to compromise. It is about saying yes to responsibility. It is about saying yes to growing together instead of growing apart. And it is about understanding that love becomes more meaningful when it is transformed into action. There is something beautiful about moving from someday to now. For a long time, someday allowed us to imagine everything. Someday we will celebrate. Someday we will build a home. Someday we will make memories. Someday we will make memories. Someday we will look back and laugh about how nervous we were. But now, someday has become a plan. The dream has become a direction. The hope has become a commitment. And that change deserves to be celebrated. I also think about how different this moment would feel if we had never experienced the uncertainty that came before it. If everything had happened easily, maybe we would not understand how precious this opportunity really is. But we waited, we faced questions, we had difficult conversations, we continued believing. And now we have reached the point where we can finally look forward without constantly wondering whether the door will open. It has opened, and we are ready to walk through it. I know there will be people who celebrate with us. People who will smile when they hear the news. People who will offer advice, encouragement, and blessings. But beyond the celebration, I want to remember the responsibility that comes with this moment. We are not simply starting a wedding plan. We are beginning to build a life. And that life should be built on honesty, respect, patience, faith, communication, and genuine love. That is the kind of future worth working for. So today, I can finally say those words with confidence. We are getting married. Not because everything is perfect. Not because we know exactly what every day ahead will look like. But because we have chosen each other, we have faced the uncertainty, and we are willing to continue choosing each other as the future unfolds. The word finally carries a lot of emotion because it reminds us how long we have waited for this chapter. And the word married carries even more because it reminds us that this is not merely a destination. It is the beginning of a lifetime. So congratulations to us, congratulations to our families, and congratulations to everyone who believed in this love when the future was still uncertain. The dream is no longer just a dream. We are finally ready to turn it into a life together. Now that we have reached this moment, I keep thinking about what my dad's acceptance truly means. It is easy to celebrate the good news, to become excited about the wedding, to imagine the smiles, the gathering of family and friends, and all the beautiful memories that will come with this new chapter. But beneath all of that excitement is something much deeper, a responsibility. When someone gives you their trust, you have to understand the value of what you have been given. And when a father finally accepts the person his child has chosen to marry, that acceptance should inspire gratitude, maturity, and the commitment to build something worthy of that trust. I do not want to make a promise that sounds beautiful only because this is a beautiful moment. I want to make a promise that still means something when the excitement becomes ordinary life. Anyone can speak passionately when everything is going well. The real test comes later, when life becomes demanding, when responsibilities increase, when misunderstandings happen, and when patience is required. That is when our commitment will have to become more than words. Marriage is not a promise that everything will always be easy. It is a promise that we will face the difficult things together. That distinction matters to me. I want my future spouse to know that I am not entering marriage because I expect perfection. I am entering marriage because I am willing to grow. I know that both of us will continue changing throughout our lives. We will learn new things about ourselves. Our dreams may evolve. Our responsibilities may change. There will be seasons when one of us needs more support than the other. And in those seasons, I want us to remember that love is not a competition. We do not have to keep score. We do not have to ask who sacrificed more. We do not have to treat every disagreement like a battle that one person must win. We need to remember that we are building the same future. That is the promise I want to make. I promise to listen, even when listening is difficult. I promise to communicate instead of allowing silence to create distance. I promise to respect the person I am marrying, not only in public but also in private. I promise to remember that words can leave lasting marks, and therefore I will try to speak with care even when emotions are strong. I promise to apologize when I am wrong, instead of allowing pride to become more important than our relationship. And I promise to forgive because holding on to every mistake will eventually turn love into a record of past failures instead of a partnership built on growth. These promises may sound simple, but I know they require effort. It is easy to say, "I will always love you." It is harder to demonstrate that love through patience when you are tired. It is easy to say, "I will always be there." It is harder to stay present when circumstances become uncomfortable. It is easy to promise forever during a beautiful celebration. It is harder to choose forever during an ordinary day when life feels complicated, but that is where real commitment lies. It lives in the ordinary. It lives in the small decisions nobody applauds. It lives in checking on each other after a difficult day. It lives in listening to a story you have already heard because you know it matters to the person telling it. It lives in celebrating small victories. It lives in making room for each other's dreams. It lives in saying, "How can I help?" instead of, "Why is this my problem?" That is the kind of marriage I want to build. And I want my dad to see that his trust has made me take this responsibility even more seriously. I understand now that when he questioned our relationship, he was not simply asking whether we loved each other. He was asking whether we were prepared to care for each other. There is a difference. Love can begin with emotion, but marriage requires character. Love can begin with attraction, but marriage requires respect. Love can begin with excitement, but marriage requires consistency. Love can begin with a dream, but marriage requires work. And I want to be ready for that work. I want our home to be a place where both of us feel safe enough to be honest. A place where mistakes can be acknowledged without humiliation. A place where disagreements can happen without destroying respect. A place where success is celebrated and difficult seasons are faced together. I want our marriage to be the kind of relationship that becomes stronger because we learn from our challenges instead of allowing those challenges to divide us. There will be moments when we disagree. That is normal. Two people can love each other deeply and still have different opinions. What matters is how we handle those differences. I do not want to be so focused on proving that I am right that I forget that the person standing across from me is someone I love. Sometimes the most important question is not, who is right? Sometimes it is, how can we understand each other? That is the kind of mindset I want to carry into marriage, and there will be moments when forgiveness is necessary. We will make mistakes. We are human. We will sometimes say the wrong thing, misunderstand one another, or fail to recognize what the other person needs. But I do not want one mistake to become the definition of an entire person. I want us to learn how to say, "I was wrong." I want us to learn how to say, "I understand why that hurt you." I want us to learn how to say, "Let's work through this." Those words can save a relationship from unnecessary distance. And perhaps that is one of the greatest promises I can make. Not that I will never make mistakes, but that I will not let pride prevent me from making things right. I also want our marriage to remain connected to gratitude. When people finally receive something they have wanted for a long time, there's a danger of becoming so comfortable with it that they forget how precious it once felt. I never want to forget this moment. I never want to forget the uncertainty that came before it. I never want to forget the feeling of hearing that my dad accepted us. I never want to forget the conversations, the patience, the questions, and the journey that brought us here. Because remembering the beginning helps you appreciate the middle. Years from now, when life has become busy and the excitement of the wedding is a distant memory, I want us to be able to look back and remember how much this moment meant. I want us to remember that there was a time when we were simply hoping for the opportunity to build this future. And now we have it. That should make us grateful, not careless. It should make us more committed, not less. It should remind us that what we have is something worth protecting. Marriage should never be treated as something guaranteed simply because two people said yes once. It should be treated as something we continue choosing. Every day gives us another opportunity to choose kindness, another opportunity to choose patience, another opportunity to choose honesty, another opportunity to choose honesty, another opportunity to choose each other. That is what I want our future to look like. Not perfect, but genuine. Not without challenges, but strong enough to face them. Not without disagreements, but full of respect. Not without disagreements, but full of respect. Not without difficult seasons, but filled with the determination to keep walking forward together. And when I think about my dad's acceptance, I realize that the greatest way to honor it is not by having the most beautiful wedding. It is by building the most meaningful marriage we can. The flowers will eventually disappear. The music will eventually stop. The photographs will become memories. The celebration will end, but the commitment will remain. That is what matters. So I want to make this promise with a full heart. I will not treat this marriage as a moment. I will treat it as a lifelong responsibility, a daily choice, and one of the greatest gifts I have ever been trusted with. And if we can carry that promise into every season ahead, then my dad's acceptance will become more than a beautiful moment. It will become the beginning of a marriage built on trust, respect, patience, and lasting love. There are some moments in life when you realize that the chapter you have been waiting for has finally arrived. You look back at everything that happened before. The questions, the uncertainty, the difficult conversations, the patience, the moments when you wondered if everything would work out. And suddenly, you understand why the journey mattered. This is one of those moments for me. My dad accepted us, and with that acceptance comes a feeling that is difficult to put into words. It feels like relief, gratitude, happiness, and hope all arriving at the same time. After everything we have experienced, we can finally look toward the future and say with confidence that we are moving forward together. But as beautiful as this moment is, I know that it is not the end of our story. In many ways, it is only the beginning. For a long time, we may have imagined what it would feel like to finally receive that acceptance. We imagined the celebration, the smiles, the congratulations, and the possibility of finally making plans without wondering whether something might stand in our way. Now that the moment has arrived, I want to pause and truly appreciate it. I want to appreciate my dad. I want to appreciate the person I love. I want to appreciate the families and people who have supported us. And I want to appreciate every difficult moment that taught us how valuable this moment really is. Because sometimes we do not understand the beauty of a blessing until we have experienced the uncertainty that came before it. If everything had happened immediately, perhaps we would have celebrated without understanding the deeper meaning. But we waited. We faced questions. We learned patience. We learned that love cannot always control the timing of life. And now, finally, we are here. We are getting married. Those words still feel powerful. They are not simply an announcement. They represent a decision. They represent a promise. They represent two people saying that they are ready to build a future together. And that future will not always look exactly the way we imagine today. There will be surprises. There will be changes. There will be seasons of great happiness and seasons that require courage. But I do not want to be afraid of that uncertainty. I want to welcome it with faith and commitment. Because the goal of marriage is not to predict every challenge before it happens. The goal is to build a relationship strong enough to face whatever comes. That means remembering that we are partners. When one of us succeeds, we celebrate together. When one of us struggles, we support each other. When one of us feels discouraged, the other reminds them that difficult moments do not last forever. When one of us makes a mistake, we choose understanding instead of humiliation. When life becomes overwhelming, we remind each other that we do not have to carry everything alone. That is the future I want. I do not want a marriage that only looks beautiful from the outside. I want a marriage that feels strong on the inside. I want us to be able to talk honestly. I want us to laugh together. I want us to create traditions that belong only to us. I want us to celebrate the small things that other people might not notice. I want us to look back years from now and realize that the greatest moments were not necessarily the dramatic ones. They were the ordinary evenings, the unexpected laughs, the quiet conversations, and the simple moments when we knew we were exactly where we were supposed to be. That is what I hope for. And I also hope that we never forget where this journey began. There will be a wedding day, and I know it will be beautiful. There will be photographs, family members, friends, celebration, and memories that we will carry for years. But when that day is over, the real journey will continue. The decorations will come down, the guests will return home, the music will stop, and the two of us will wake up the next morning, still committed to one another. That morning will matter just as much as the wedding day, maybe even more. Because marriage is built after the celebration. It is built when there is no audience. It is built in the quiet moments. It is built through everyday choices. And I want to make those choices with intention. I want to choose patience when frustration would be easier. I want to choose communication when silence would be easier. I want to choose forgiveness when holding on to anger would feel justified. I want to choose gratitude when routine makes life feel ordinary. And I want to choose love even when love requires effort. That is the promise behind the congratulations. When people say, "Congratulations, you're getting married," they are celebrating something wonderful. But I also hear another message inside those words: "You have entered a new chapter. Take care of it." And I intend to. I want to take care of this relationship. I want to protect the trust we have built. I want to honor the families who have supported us. And I especially want to honor the trust my dad has now placed in this future. His acceptance means something because it was not automatic. It came after questions and time. It came after us questioning whether our intentions were serious. So I want to make sure that when he looks at us years from now, he feels proud of the decision he made. I want him to see two people who did not take love for granted. Two people who continued growing. Two people who learned how to communicate. Two people who understood that commitment is demonstrated through actions. And I want my future spouse to know that I will never consider their love something ordinary simply because we have it. There was a time when we could only imagine this future. Now we have the opportunity to build it. That is a gift. And gifts should be appreciated. As we move forward, I hope we never lose the excitement of being grateful for one another. I hope we continue asking questions. I hope we continue learning about each other. I hope we never become too comfortable to say, "I love you," or "thank you," or "I'm proud of you." Small words can carry enormous meaning when they are spoken sincerely. I also hope we continue to make room for each other's dreams. Marriage should not mean that one person disappears into the other. It should mean that two people become stronger while remaining themselves. I want us to encourage one another to grow. I want us to celebrate each other's goals. I want us to be honest about our fears. I want us to create a future where both of us feel heard and valued. And when life becomes difficult, I want us to remember the journey that brought us here. Remember the waiting. Remember the uncertainty. Remember the moment my dad finally said yes. Remember how much this meant to us. Because remembering those moments can help us stay grateful when life becomes busy. One day we may look back at this chapter and realize that we were standing at the beginning of a life we could not yet fully imagine. We will have stories we have not lived yet, memories we have not created yet, challenges we have not faced yet, joy we have not experienced yet. And that unknown future is not something to fear, it is something to look forward to. because we will enter it together. That is what makes this moment so beautiful. We do not know exactly what tomorrow will bring, but we know who we want beside us. And sometimes that is enough. So today, I want to say congratulations, not only because we are getting married, but because we have reached a point where love, trust, patience, and commitment have come together. Congratulations to the two people who kept believing. Congratulations to the families who supported us. Congratulations to my dad for trusting the future we are building. And congratulations to the person who will walk beside me through